Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, hanging out with you where sports meets life. You're with us on youtube.com and facebook.com, both / Wake Up Call DT and on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. I'm always happy to be here for many years now, a decade time. I can't believe that. Can you believe it, Mike? That's we have American Athletic Conference Commissioner Mike Aresco, that you and I have been either in the same room, on the phone, or picture in picture for a decade now.
Yeah, it is hard to believe, Dan, and it's been a great decade. It really has, and it didn't start particularly well. It didn't have an auspicious start, but boy, it's developed nicely. But yeah, you're right. 10 years. Well, we're all a bit older, but a little more gray hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So, and I did not have the goatee when we started. The goatee is, I think, 4 years old in April. So I didn't have that in the beginning, have it now. But
I don't even remember that. I do remember for example, my son had a beard for a while, and when he shaved it, I never even noticed. I mean, you get used to something.
So I'm going to show you something here. Have you ever seen the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner?
I have watched parts of it. I haven't watched the whole thing.
Yep. Okay. So this movie was made years ago, so I'm not like breaking any crazy news here, but there was a Post-it note that he had folded. And when they went for the first draft pick, he throws the Post-it note and they open it up and it says this thing, it says blank, no matter what. And I won't give away to what it says, but in that same theme, people were asking me weeks before going into the tournament about who do you think, who are your Final Four, who's the team. And I kept going back to Houston, and I kept talking about Houston because Kelvin Sampson over these last couple of years, he took a step and he took another step forward. And I feel like they've been right on the cusp to be there. And now I think that this, to me, is the year. So I wrote, before I even finished my bracket, I wrote on this napkin these words: Houston, no matter what. So I am sticking with Kelvin Sampson, and I have the whole time here with the Houston Cougars. They were the team I picked no matter what. I do feel good, Mike, because I did the bracket and I had a bunch of red on the bracket, but 3 out of 4 Final Four correct going into the Sweet 16: Gonzaga, Houston, and Alabama. So I feel good about the fact if you got 75% of your Final Four, I think it's okay. But I wanted to share with you my Houston no matter what, because I know you would appreciate that.
Oh, definitely do. They have a tough road. Miami's a really good team, extremely well coached also. And if they get by that, they're going to play either a good Xavier or a good Texas team. So it's no slam dunk, no pun intended. But it's interesting. And Gonzaga will have a very tough game with a really good UConn team that's playing at a really high level right now. So that's going to be a tough game for Gonzaga. UConn's got all the makings of a Final Four team, whether they make it or not. Yeah. And it's you get to this point, I've always said it's always a crapshoot. You never know. I mean, FAU is going to have an interesting game with a really good Kansas State team, and Noel is a great player. So we'll see. It's interesting. Creighton Princeton could be an interesting game. You just never know. You never know what's going to happen in these games. So anyway, we're looking forward to it, though. I think Houston, if the kids are healthy and stay healthy and don't aggravate their injuries, Jamal Sheed and obviously Marcus Sasser, then I think Houston has an excellent chance. I think they found their mojo again in that second half. They found their identity, their DNA, and when they're playing like that, they're a tough team to beat. But again, anything can happen.
And it's been a beautiful tournament. We're here with the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, to speak on the present and the future, because you had an interesting place as commissioner, seeing Memphis go up against FAU in the round of 64, the 8-9, as you have a team that's been a part of the emergence and rise of the American, and then you have FAU that is going to be part of the expansion of the American. They go up against each other, play a tight game, an awesome game, a close game, questionable call at the end. It's a call that, and it takes nothing away from FAU at all, because they had to make the layup. They had to do those things. But I go into that Memphis call. You and I talked about it off the air. talked about it on the show a lot. One of the worst calls I've seen. I was told that those officials did not move on after that round, as we got a Memphis player on the ground. Memphis is up by a point on the ground with the ball. Two players come running at the official who's looking at the ball and scream in his ear, timeout. He does not award the timeout. The players get tied up. Obviously, the longer the player's on the ground, there's other people that get involved. He calls a jump ball, possession arrow FAU, and with under 3 seconds to play, they get a layup, and Memphis loses by a point. So it's bittersweet, I'm sure, for you as a commissioner, with Memphis there, FAU coming in, and for one team to move on based on a questionable call. So I understand the Memphis fans that are upset because they have every reason to be with the call that was not called correctly. And at the same time, FAU has had a terrific run. So there's beauty, and then there's a little bit of pain with going with what Memphis went through.
Yeah, there's no question, Dan. For clarity's sake, I mean, I was rooting all in for Memphis. I mean, in our league, FAU is not in yet, right? And so I was absolutely rooting for Memphis. There's no ambivalence whatsoever. And I was not happy with that final call. It happens, officials make mistakes. It just seemed, to me, when I watched the call, the fella had the ball pretty clear for a while. I don't think my eyes were deceiving me. And therefore, I would think that those timeouts would have been picked up. Because you're right, it was a little while before the other guys finally were able to get in to claim a jump ball. So it happens. Memphis unfortunately threw an errant pass, and that was a key play. They had the ball with 15 seconds left, and so during the game there was probably some things they'd like to have back. It's not what you do is you can't let a game fall into the official's hands at the end, whether it's an umpire, whether it's a referee in football, whether it's an official in basketball. You got to try to make sure that that's not an issue, because officials are like players. They do make mistakes, and it happens. And in that one, although I don't even know whether the NCAA issued a statement after that or not. And I had no idea what happened to the officials or didn't happen to them. I mean, I just understand that these things happen. And as far as FAU, though, now I'm all in for them. Obviously, I'm thrilled with what they've done since. I thought they were a good team when they played Memphis. I thought Memphis should have won the game, but I thought, FAU was a really good team. And now they've proven it. I mean, they've then gone on and won 2 other games against good opposition, good teams. Tennessee, they weren't expected to beat Tennessee and had to come back, got behind. Really good team. And Brian White's done a nice job with that program. Dusty May's terrific coach, and he's got a lot of charisma. Hope he stays at FAU.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. But no, I'm all in for them now. And it's, again, Houston, same thing. I'm all in, even though they're leaving the conference after this year. I just be great if they could bring home a title. That would be wonderful. I think it'd be a great legacy for this conference, great legacy for them. My feelings toward Kelvin Sampson. I just love him. He's great. He's just a terrific person as well as a coach. He's created a tremendous family atmosphere. His wife Karen, his daughter Lauren, his son Kelvin. I mean, it's really a great environment for those kids at Houston. I think they do appreciate how lucky they are to be playing in that kind of environment for a coach like Kelvin. So I'm just, he's been one of the biggest supporters of our league right to the end, even when they knew they were leaving. So I'm thrilled, and I hope obviously they can bring it home. But as you know, you just never know in single elimination, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, FAU coming into the conference, Dusty May and what he's done. The team hasn't been a Division I basketball team for as long a time as others. We're talking about 90s to now, and they'd only made the NCAA tournament one other time. This was their first NCAA tournament win, first Sweet 16, first trip to the Elite Eight. There's a lot of firsts that are happening with FAU and Dusty May, and I love that their student athletes were in the post game last night that I was in and said, very clearly, you can't count us out anymore. You can't sit here and say that we're not a good team, that we can't do it, that we're not capable. So I think, looking at the health of the future of the American, albeit this is, a Conference USA year for FAU, to know that there's so much history being created with this program right now, and that the world is looking at FAU, has got to be exciting for you when you do look down the road to the future.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. And they really are an exciting, fun team and very talented. I think they've been under the radar a bit in this tournament, Dan, because of what FDU did around the same time, right? The stunning upset over Purdue. That, and then there were some, and then, even the Memphis game, didn't get the kind of attention it normally would have gotten. Last night you had some incredible basketball with K-State and Michigan State, a classic. You also had a classic with Gonzaga, UCLA. I just couldn't believe the finish on that one. And so you had some stuff that tends to overshadow what they've done a little bit. But maybe now that they're in the Elite Eight, people will take note of them, and we'll see. But yes, it's the fact that they're coming into the conference, and it's an unexpected bonus for us to see a program that is that good. Now, having said that, even if the coach should leave, we hope he doesn't. We know there's been speculation already about possible jobs because he's obviously emerged. You're right. You said it earlier. They are building a program now that's gotten real attention, and that's going to help them. That's going to help them recruit a coach. That's going to help them with recruits. It's going to help them in a lot of ways to do what they've done, and it's thrilling for us. Charlotte won the CBI, and I know the CBI doesn't get a lot of attention, but they've got everybody back and a really good coach, and the same thing with some of our other programs. So we're pretty excited about the basketball. It's funny, as I said to you earlier, we didn't know we were bringing in 5 pretty darn good basketball schools. We focused on football, and we're hoping we'd have good basketball as well. We knew UAB and North Texas did. And we knew Charlotte 50 years ago had a run to the Final Four, so there was a history there. But we didn't know about FAU, and we didn't, UTSA will have to build a program, and I think they will because they're all in and they're willing to invest. That's the other thing, Dan. I'll close this segment with the fact that these schools all are anxious to get into the conference, and they're anxious to invest. They understand the DNA of the conference, and they want to win. And football and basketball. Football, obviously, primarily because that's what drives everything in this day and age. But basketball, look, I love college basketball, and I think what's happened to it over the last 20 years kind of unfortunate. The way that football's tended to totally predominate. I love football too, but it's just what it is. But the point is, basketball is very important to us, men's and women's, and we'd like to do well in that sport. And I think it's important that bolsters your status as an elite conference. We're branding now as a power conference. We're getting away from the whole P5, G5 business. So anyway, where we are.
No, and you talked about Charlotte, UNC Charlotte coming in, the 49ers to the conference and just winning the CBI, the College Basketball Invitational. Doesn't get as much publicity, but it is still a championship, and it is still here in the postseason. So now that Charlotte has officially finished their final season in Conference USA in basketball as a champion, that has to be something that you're excited about. Like you said, most of the team coming back.
Yeah, I think so. And Mike Hill's great AD. Obviously he's hired a good coach.
Yeah.
I'm also excited for them in football. I know in football they're going to be much more a work in progress, but Biff Poggi is going to just, I think, do great things there. He's dynamic. He's done a great job helping out Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. I think he's going to be a home run for them. And I think they did make an unconventional hire because I think that's what they needed to do. And I'm pleased with, again, how these schools are approaching coming into our conference. Nobody is simply gliding in. They all want to accomplish something. North Texas has the resources. They've spent money. They've built tremendous facilities. UAB has the brand new stadium. Rice has a huge endowment, and they're spending money to get their programs in shape. Jose Cruz is now their baseball coach. Remember, they have a great baseball pedigree as well, as Rice. And I think overall, everybody now with FAU, Tom Herman. I mean, once we saw that, we were all talking. FAU's been a tremendous, I kudos to Brian White. A tremendous surprise. All of a sudden, you hired Tom Herman, who is going to be a winner, and then you have a Dusty May situation with a great basketball program. Not something we necessarily obviously knew at the time, but we knew they were a program that we should have in the league if we were going to go to 14 teams. Because they have the facilities, they have the location, they've shown they had the desire when they had Lane Kiffin and they were winning, and they hired Willie thinking that he could do the same thing. It didn't quite happen. So we knew that they had what I said earlier, the right DNA. Yeah. But we didn't expect this. It's tremendous.
Yeah, and we look at this here with the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, to see beyond that. So you see the success and what Memphis has done this year, what Houston has done this year, what FAU for the future is doing for the conference, Charlotte with winning the CBI, and then you go to the NIT, and in half of the Final Four in the NIT, 50% of the Final Four in the NIT this year for men's basketball, future schools coming into the American Athletic Conference. North Texas will take on Wisconsin. UAB will take on Utah Valley. And so there's a chance that North Texas and UAB could be playing each other for the championship for the NIT, which would mean that whoever wins, you have the number one team and the runner-up team, both being teams that are coming into the American Athletic Conference. So we could see this year Charlotte winning the CBI, UAB or North Texas winning the NIT, and then you have Houston still in the conference right now, and you have FAU coming into the conference. So at every level of Division I postseason tournaments, we're looking at either American Athletic or future American Athletic teams, which is very incredible. And going back into history, when there's been expansion and different moves going on, I don't know how many conferences can boast of current teams and future teams all vying for CBI, NIT, and NCAA championships.
Yeah, probably not many, if any. And it points up how silly the whole power thing is, right? To say non-power, this is a non-power conference. It's just a ridiculous statement, and unfortunately, that's the kind of nomenclature that we've had to get used to, and we're fighting it now. I couldn't agree more. And by the way, Memphis, we thought we had a chance to have Memphis and Houston in the Final Four. And if Memphis had gotten by FAU, they could well be there, as you know. Penny's done a fine job with that program. They got another star-studded recruiting class coming in. In addition, they'll have a smattering of important transfers like everybody does. But they really matured as a program and as a team this year. It's just a shame what happened to them because they too could have gone a long way. So we're in good shape. Look, first of all, we've hired a lot of new coaches who I think are going to elevate their programs. You look at what Mike Schwartz did at ECU, and you look at what Ron Hunter's done at Tulane. Now you've got a new coach at Tulsa. We think is going to do great things. He, this year was just getting his feet wet. Same thing at SMU. You got Penny, Wichita State now obviously hired Paul Mills, and you know what he's done at Oral Roberts. Arthur Johnson, the AD at Temple, will hire a great coach. Arthur wants to win, and he'll hire a great coach. And that's an important program. Look at the pedigree of Temple. My goodness, going back to the Cheney years and all the great teams they've had.
Yeah.
And, you've got USF is going to hire a new coach, and that'll energize that program. So the incumbents are doing their share too, and you're going to now they're going to be pushed by the new people coming in. I think it's a good combination. I'm very optimistic about the future of the conference. I really am. And I was happy to get the expansion done when we did, but I don't think I was quite as sanguine about our future because you just didn't know, right? You just didn't know what the newcomers would bring, and a lot of our incumbents were struggling. We knew how important Houston and Cincinnati and UCF had been, but there's no reason why our incumbent schools who challenged those schools throughout the 10 years and often prevailed can't continue to do it, and the new guys could continue to do what the three leaving did, build their program. UCF was 0-12 in 2015, right? Houston's been up and down. Cincinnati too. That's not they had many years when they weren't successful. So the question then is not to denigrate those programs in any way, but the schools we have in this conference have competed and will compete.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it is knowing that you can make, this announcement and say, I mean, we could be saying, CBI champion entering the conference, NIT champion entering the conference, NCAA champion or NCAA Final Four or Elite Eight, whatever that may be, entering the conference. So, there's a lot to be had by that. And you could say, hey, we bid adieu to Houston, the NCAA champion. So there's a lot of, at least, through my viewfinder, focus on what the American is and what the American will be and the excitement around that. And, when you pick these schools and you strategically kept yourself in Houston with Rice, and then, put yourself in another part of Texas, in North Texas with Denton, and then, obviously in Charlotte, North Carolina, one of the fastest growing cities, which is a huge part of it with UNC Charlotte, FAU with UCF coming out, you bring in FAU. And so you have that Florida market and that continued connection there. And then you have, Texas San Antonio with UTSA. You have Alabama with UAB. There's a lot to be said about strategically picking these schools. But like you said, you looked at football and now you're gaining all of this basketball. I mean, it has to be exciting. And like you said, there's still Conference USA and you're going for Houston and you're going for Memphis. But to know that this is your future, you're a leader and you know about promotion and you know about, obviously trying to find the right message. And I would think that when you do have media days for basketball, it's pretty clear that there's a very positive message that you're going to be sending about the future of this conference.
Oh, without question, Dan. And we do promote, but we promote based on achievement, and we have achieved. Let's not forget Tulane winning the Cotton Bowl in dramatic fashion, and 8 out of 10 years in those games, winning 4 of them, and should have won a 5th, as you know. And we're competitive in every single one of them. And basketball, we've been kind of snake bitten in it, but we've been. Excuse me, Dan. I was getting a call there. I had to decline. The point is, we've been competitive in in all our games, and in basketball, we've been snake bitten because we've had a lot of good teams, and we've come darn close. And we did make the Final Four, the Elite Eight. We won a national championship when UConn was in the conference. We won 3 women's when UConn was in the conference. So we've done a lot there. Now, in terms of the new schools, Dan, when we chose them, it wasn't random. We looked at programs that we thought had the wherewithal to invest, had the ability, had the resources, were in the right places, cared about the sports that we cared about. When you look at a UTSA and what they were doing in San Antonio and the fan base they've created and the football program that they have, and then when you look at North Texas, and I saw their practice facilities firsthand, after we took them, and I knew about them, I'd heard. It is spectacular what they've done up there, and we knew they were competitive. We knew what UAB had done. We knew that Charlotte, like you said, fastest growing region, one of the fastest growing in the country, a banking center. We knew they cared. I knew their AD. See, some of these, we knew Ren Baker, even though he's now at West Virginia. We knew Ren committed. Ren was an old Memphis guy. I knew Mark Ingram. I talked to Mark Ingram many times over the years. I knew how committed he was. At UAB, Brian White, I knew quite well. I knew Mike Hill from his days working with Jeremy Foley. I didn't know Lisa Campos, but I could see what they were doing. And Joe Carlgard and I have known each other for a long, long time. And when they said they were ready seriously to invest and to join our league, I took them at their word, and I know I'm right. And so we took schools. And by the way, somebody did a study, Dan. I can't remember what the name of it was. But somebody could find it and said, look, which are the schools that are the ones that could step up in Conference USA, for example? Which are the ones that have the wherewithal, spend the money, invest, have the this and that.
Yeah.
Those 6 schools were right there at the top, and again, we weren't sure we wanted to go to 14. I don't know which schools we would have decided not to take. As you know, we did want to fortify our position in Texas. We absolutely think that's an important, just an important territory to dominate. And, we're in there obviously with the SEC and the Big 12, but the point is, we have a big stake in Texas, and that was important. And we're in great markets. It's nice to get Houston again with Rice. And if they develop their programs, people will follow them. So we'll see what happens, but very optimistic.
Yeah, and you bring it up, Ren Baker, when him and I spoke with him at North Texas, now he's at West Virginia, he had said to me that he remembers being in a room with you and having, like there was a drawing board. And you said, I think we're going to call it the American, and you were kind of talking about stuff and whatnot. And he told me about remembering those moments from the beginning stages. And then Mark Ingram told me, hey, listen, the first time around, we could have been taken by the American, but we weren't ready, and we had to get ready. And they took it upon themselves when they felt like they weren't prepared to make that move, that he's done so much in his time there so that if you came calling again, he would be prepared for that. So I think it's really unique stories that, Ren remembers being, connected with Memphis and seeing the original drawing board, so to speak, for the American. And at the same time that Mark Ingram said, hey, it's not that there couldn't have been interest in the past, but we knew we got passed over because we weren't prepared, and we're prepared this time.
No question. And there were some schools that called us and said, we're just not ready to spend the kind of money that you need spent to build a program. We're just not we'd like to be, but we're not. And, we had, several dozen schools that had an interest in us. Of course, it's a pecking order. You know what this is, Dan, and it's the same thing with all that speculation about the so-called P5. And so I'm trying to get rid of that nomenclature. And, I don't know whether I'm tilting at windmills or not, but I think we've made some progress already in that regard. It's harmful to college athletics. You know that. It tends to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but same thing goes for conferences that are perceived below us, right? In terms of wanting to be in our conference. I think we've established an excellent niche as a competitive, success-driven conference that creates cohesion, even though we may have some disparate schools, right? We have some different kinds of schools in our conference. We're a lot more geographically cohesive, though, Dan, now than a lot of conferences are. When you really think about our kind of lower southwest membership for the most part. But, we're proud to have Temple, and we're proud to have East Carolina, and we're proud to have the Florida schools. But even they're not that far away from our other schools relative to what you see with the Big Ten now, cross country. You see from, northern New York State where you are to, to Miami, to northern Washington, all the way down to, Arizona. It's not like there isn't geographical distance among all the conferences now. Not that there wasn't before, because the Pac-12 footprint hadn't really changed, but it was always a pretty vast footprint. ACC's has, the Big Ten's has, and the Big 12 has. I mean, you go up to Cincinnati now, you go over to UCF, you've got and BYU. So you now have, very, very far-flung conferences, and we're far more geographically cohesive than maybe people thought we were originally.
And you bring that up in a couple points before I let you go. American Athletic Conference Commissioner Mike Aresco here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Mike, when you talk about that, I actually did a few months ago. I thought I was doing almost like a meteorologist with the screen next to me, but I was doing geography instead of meteorology. And so I had the conferences up on the map. And as I was doing that, I had where each conference was and what was going on with each conference as far as who was taking what. And I circled where the SEC was, which was the Southeast, but then, out to Texas. So Southeast. And then I circled where the Sun Belt was, and I circled where the American was. And I realized something, that with your conference, you have stayed pretty true, like you said, to a certain area. And I was doing the other conferences, or like here, but then over here, and then here, but then over there. You stayed in that kind of SEC footprint area, which I think if we look at the Sun Belt, we look at the SEC, and we look at the American, those conferences are staying true to a certain area, which is a very smart area. So you brought it up, but I actually mapped it out months ago and showed everybody physically. The American Athletic Conference is a lot more cohesive than a lot of these other conferences out there.
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect to that, Dan. When we started, as you know, we considered ourselves a conference of opportunity, right? Yeah. We had schools that either didn't have a home or had lost a home, or the Big East imploded, and so we knew we weren't a typical geographically based conference that had been around for literally 100 years. But if you look at the way the conference has evolved and the teams we've taken, there's a reason we're in that region. And that's where people care about football. That's where people care about basketball. That's where people care about their programs and are willing to invest, and where the recruits are. I mean, look, we're in Texas. We're in Louisiana. We're in Oklahoma. We were in Ohio. We're in Florida. I mean, Alabama. These are hotbeds for what we're trying to accomplish. And that's why we're there. And, Temple was in the old Big East and joined us. And so they're obviously a little bit of a geographical outlier, although Middle Atlantic, not that far. East Carolina fits our profile nicely, even though they're a little further away. And the two Florida schools, but we're in places where we need to be, and where it's not surprising that there are schools that would fit our conference profile in those places. And that was pretty much true at the beginning of the conference in many respects. Now it's even more true because we've had to evolve and reassemble ourselves again.
Well, and the good thing about it too is reuniting some of these schools that were in Conference USA now in the American. You have some rivalries with that. You have rivalries in Florida. You have rivalries in North Carolina. You have rivalries in Texas. So you are becoming a conference that is evolving into this world of it's not a bunch of random, as we feel has happened with realignment. There are geographical places that are going to recruit against each other. They're going to have some rivalries. They're not going to be that far away, which is a good thing, especially with a lot of these teams coming in. Before we wrap up, I have to ask you this on the media side of things. I've been very patient for the face-to-face media stuff, as many of us have been. I know we went through COVID, and then, with teams leaving and teams coming in, I could totally understand as a conference how, you say, well, let's wait to do the in-person to where we actually know what this conference is going to be. So football wise, can we plan on being in Irving, Texas? And will there be anything done on site for basketball?
Both, yeah, both sports. We're back to in-person meetings, especially now. We have a reinvented conference. We have a lot of new faces. We'll definitely be in the Irving area, probably in Irving. We've got some good locations we're scouting out for our football media day, and we'll do the same for basketball. Absolutely, we'll be in person again. This year, we felt that we didn't need to be. We thought, we can save some money. We have people who, still were. COVID was pretty much over, as you know, but the point is we still decided that ultimately this year didn't make sense necessarily to have it in person, but next year for sure. And I think in the future we'll be in person in those meetings. I think that's one where same thing with our annual meeting. We were in person this past year, and we will be again, although this year we'll do even a bigger meeting with all the new people coming in. We want everybody to get to know each other. But in the future, yes, barring another pandemic, God forbid, we'll all be together again.
And can we look at potentially the reemergence of the teleconference where we can actually connect outside of media day with the conference's coaches for basketball and or football?
Absolutely. Yeah. No question about it. Yep. Absolutely.
So some good news.
Yeah. And incidentally, Dan, we hope to have really strong attendance by the media at our media days. In part, we have 4 schools in Texas, right? We have schools right up the road in Oklahoma and in Louisiana and in Memphis. So we were hoping that we get a good media contingent. As you know, the media hadn't traveled quite as much with cost cutting and all the things been going on in that world. Yep. But we think that we should have a very, very strong attendance, just like our college basketball men's and women's tournaments in Fort Worth. We think that we're going to lose Houston, and they brought fans, no question, and they're a big time program. But we think at this point that with 4 schools in Texas and with some really good programs among those schools, and with Memphis having a top program, and with Ron Hunter doing what he's done at Tulane, and obviously with Tulsa having a new coach, that's going to spark excitement. And Wichita State, how many fans they would bring. So we think we're gonna see good attendance also at our men's and women's tournaments in Fort Worth as well. So again, excited about that, and we'll see where all that goes.
Coming from the Commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. A lot of positives right now in the present, a lot of things to build on for the future, and a lot of excitement for the American Athletic Conference. Thank you, Mike, for sharing all this good news. I know a lot of people are watching this. They're very happy now to hear this news. So congratulations on the success of the conference and what's to come. And as always, I appreciate your time.
Well, as usual, Dan, thanks for having me. Thanks for your support of the conference and your willingness to talk to me, and we discuss these things. And been a lot of turbulence, but there's been a lot of optimistic things happening too. So it's renewal, it's change, it's a lot of different things going on. But in the end, I think we're in a good place. And you don't know that from year to year anymore in college athletics. Pretty tough business these days. But thanks again for having me. Appreciate it very much. And have a great week. Enjoy the games tonight.
Yeah, you too. And I think that selfishly, you chose the best barbecue spots to have in your conference as well.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Yeah.